This is my presentation on how societal views of women in Tess, and then we're going to also look at how they're viewed now. So, some background. Tess of the Dubervilles is set in the late 1800s, a time period of industrialization and great societal change in some circles. Well, there was great societal change happening due to the industrialization period and many people finding work and employment in cities. There were some circles that were still extremely conservative. You see them sometimes in shows such as Bridgerton, which is set in a similar time to, say, Tess of the Dubervilles. But you also have this other period of extreme industrialization and much more urbanization, which is a very different, so you have very different societies happening all at the same time, maybe even sometimes in the same nation. This is especially important for women because at that time, many of the social issues that were going on were focused on the actions that they took, and especially them before marriage, specifically before marriage, and say how they were courted. So say how you found a wife, especially if we were talking about much wealthier families. A lot of times if you were poor, didn't really matter. I mean, as much as if you were poor, there were some times where if you had a wife who was had like 5 children before you had ever married her, then it might be an issue. But really, it's mostly with a higher class. Though, well, a lot has changed in the time of Tess, many of these still older views of women exist. And they behave themselves still. I would say they still live on social media in a lot of cases. So let's talk about how this sort of affects and these societal issues affect Tess. Well, during the book, Tess runs into the societal issues that are faced after her husband, Angel Clare, finds out that originally she was raped by Alec de Duberville. Now, of course, she does spend some time with him after, but really, we know by modern standards, that doesn't really matter. She was raped and thus is still in the traumatic period. They didn't have the brain research at the time, so they don't know the trauma that may have been caused by that event. But still, we need to look after he sees her as a woman who's beyond redemption for having any sort of relationship with a man, even though this relationship began because of a rape. This shows some of the major societal stigma around any sort of premarital sexual activity. This is one of the first times that after she forgives Angel for having premarital sex, that women have a much different view. He says, I don't recognize you even as the same person you were before he knew, even though he tells her something extremely similar. That though it is then seeing the need to be pure and chaste that is evidenced by like him finding a milkmaid of lower stature and her innocence and her complete belief that she is an innocent woman. Though she is an innocent woman by today's standards, the fact that she was raped and had any sort of activity that was nearing sexual nature is seen as a complete loss of innocence. They don't kiss, or I don't believe, they don't really, like a major step for them is a cheek kiss. So you can see how things may be different from today. Some evidence for my claim, which were used in my topic proposal, is a article from Hardy 203, which comes from Tess about different societies and how he sees her as, because she's arguing that maybe other cultures would view this as okay, that she is as a completely not, but very simplistic woman. She does not know the social things. And the second one, I know they're flipped, and I know that's something, but understand, but it also proves my point about how him finding a milkmaid who was so revered that he was surprised by this touch of rarity that seems to found in this woman because of who she is. So let's talk about how societal views affect women today. Though we've made a lot of progress, we still have women facing societal views that may change depending on where you live or what upbringing you have. Well, this may seem somewhat similar to Tess. The topics that are discussed are much deeper than in that time period of the book. Many celebrities that are seen as female role models post photos that are extremely sexualized and have images that are not chaste or innocent, that the view back then have much more moved into a very different sort of view in the popular culture since the introduction of women such as Marilyn Monroe in the 1950s, who were trailblazers for people that are so-called sex symbols in the media. Though there has been some pushback for stars who do work like this. And there's a lot of times that they are seen as they're seen and talked about in ways that are not very flattering because they decide to display their body and display who they are in this way. And I don't really feel comfortable talking about what they're labeled as because it's extremely hurtful sometimes and extremely harsh toward especially women. Now, there are men may do a little, have some of that, but it's a lot of times women that are attacked specifically and seen as these sex symbols. And when they post pictures of themselves, at times they can be attacked, they can be censured or gone after for doing something like that. I'd like to bring forward an example of a woman named Billie Eilish, who after she decided to take, she released or posted some photos of herself in a much more revealing manner, which were posted in Vogue, which has been a style magazine. There were some articles that were written focusing on the fact that she had decided to switch from a much more modest look instead of how she had originally viewed herself. So a lot of times how women are viewed, it's either you're you wear baggy clothing or you become a sex symbol, and there's no real in between at times for women. So women are hurt in this way by places like Page Six or Gotham columnists. They're treated much closer at a microscope for similar offenses than men. So like where men can have outbursts or want people out of their face. If you ever seen a paparazzi where like star like Britney Spears can have a breakdown where she goes after someone who's harassing her at the end of the night, even if they are a paparazzi, they times can be gone after for outbreaks like that. And certain things in one country may be outright banned, while others in another country could be completely fine. So this is similar to how Tess believes other cultures would be okay with what was happening prior to her marriage, where instead of the home country and expectations, not allowed. So we're gonna look at some artifacts, and these are my artifacts. So one is, this is the American Rules of Etiquette and Politeness from the time period. It's 1883, just a couple years before Tess, but it kind of displays how there were whole series of etiquette that were focused on how women should behave, and men, and very deep and decisive rules about how people should behave. My other artifact is a phone, because it's extremely important that to this story of how women are treated is because of how phones are viewed and how telecommunication has allowed for people to kind of hide behind them. The other artifact, which is in my PowerPoint, which is shared with you, is Page Six. Now I would share Page Six and show to you, but it is at this point, in my opinion, not school appropriate. It is school appropriate, but I don't want to air it out for my class to see, because it is at times, in my opinion, disturbing, and it is in ways mean and vile against people. But I feel it is important to show that artifact and show how important it is, and show how women are attacked, and not only attacked, but focused on much deeper than that. This is my test presentation. Thank you for listening.